The Project Aura. The tape recorder was still spinning when Dr. Julian Sterling's hands closed around Emma's throat. Above her, through the fluorescent haze, she saw his face. Serene, professional, absolutely certain of what came next. One thought crystallized. Her mother had looked into this same face 40 years ago. 13 hours earlier, the basement smelled like rust and rot. Emma's heavy leather boots crunched over shattered glass, each step deliberate, her breath fogging the beam of the maglite. The abandoned Blackwood Psychiatric wing didn't breathe anymore. It only decayed. She'd come to check for squatters, standard county protocol for condemned buildings. But the darkness here felt alive, pulsing. The flashlight caught graffiti on peeling walls, rusted gurneys tilted at obscene angles. Dust hung so thick she could see it suspended in the beam like something tangible, something that could choke. A protrusion under a rotting wooden pallet caught her eye. She kicked. The pallet splintered with a loud crack that echoed wrong in the silence. Beneath it, a single hinged floorboard was slightly elevated, as if holding its breath. Her fingers, already stained with gray dust, pried the board up. It groaned against rusty nails, a sound like something dying slowly. In the cavity beneath lay a green metal medical box, locked with a heavy iron padlock. A white label, typewriter printed and precise. Strictly confidential. Project Aura. Emma pulled the small hammer from her utility belt. First blow. Nothing. Second blow. The padlock cracked. Third blow. The lock snapped. She flung the lid open. Yellowed manila files. A chunky black Grundig tape recorder, the kind they'd used before digital. Dust rose from the box in a choking cloud, catching the flashlight beam. Emma reached for the recorder, her hand steady only because she didn't yet understand what she was looking at. Her thumb pressed the play button. The magnetic tape reels spun slowly, groaning against age. Static. Then, a woman's voice, trembling, thin, weeping. Dr. Sterling told me I was broken. He said he could fix me. But every time I tried to leave, he said my family didn't want me back. He said I was too damaged. Emma's hand shook. She stopped the tape. The rain outside intensified, hammering the metal roof like fists demanding entry. The basement hallway stretched toward the exit. Emma clutched the box to her chest, jogging, her boots splashing through standing water. The exit was close. She could see the chain-link fence through the broken window frame, could almost taste the rain-fresh air. A shadow detached itself from the doorframe. A gloved hand reached out, grabbing her shoulder and spinning her around with enough force to crack her vision sideways. The assailant wore a dark raincoat, face hidden beneath a hood. Raincoat fabric glistened under her flashlight beam, wet, expensive, moving fast. Emma swung the heavy metal box like a weapon. The corner caught the attacker's jaw with a sickening crack. The hooded figure staggered backward, blood blooming on their chin, but they didn't stop coming. They lunged for the box again. Emma sidestepped, half turning, but strong hands grabbed her from behind, a second assailant, climbing up from the basement stairs she'd forgotten about. The first attacker recovered, slammed into her front. The hallway tilted, metal lockers. Her head hit them with a booming echo that filled the space like a scream. Stars exploded in her vision. Hands everywhere now, tugging at the box, her arms, her hair. Emma drove her knee upward, connected. The first attacker doubled over with a sound like a struck animal. She kicked, scrambled, found her flashlight rolling across the floor and swung it in a wide arc at the face emerging from the darkness. The beam swept past, missed, but the attacker flinched. Enough. Emma sprinted through the basement door into the rain. She didn't look back. Behind her, a silhouette stood in the clinic's entrance, framed by rot and darkness. Perfectly still, her apartment was cold. Emma sat at the wooden table, her wet hair wrapped in a towel, the files spread out before her like a corpse for autopsy. The lamp overhead hummed a thin, continuous note. Medical terminology covered every page. Thorazine, sleep therapy, compliance ratings, charts, drug dosages, forms signed in cursive handwriting that looked like someone's hand moving through water, heavy, resistant, forced. She pulled a photograph from the bottom of file number 104. A Polaroid, the colors faded to the spectrum of old wounds. A young woman with Emma's eyes sat in a padded chair, looking hollow. The photo was degraded, but the resemblance was unmistakable. The caption, typewriter printed, Patient, Elena Vance. Status, subject to suggestibility. Elena, her mother's name. A gasp escaped Emma's throat. She covered her mouth, but the sound was already loose in the apartment, already real. Her hand shook as she flipped the file page. A signed document. Treatment authorization. And at the bottom, a signature. An aggressive flourish of a pen. Dr. Julian Sterling. The same Dr. Julian Sterling who had given a speech at her high school graduation. The same Dr. Julian Sterling who sponsored the Little League. The same Dr. Julian Sterling who sat on the city council, whose face smiled from campaign posters on Main Street. Emma's fingers moved to her phone without permission. Julian Sterling. Search. The screen flashed. Voted Citizen of the Year, 5 years straight. Pictures, press releases, a family photo. Sterling with a blonde woman and 2 children, all smiling at a yacht club. The civic leader everyone in town had been taught to respect. She pulled a framed photo of her mother from the mantel. Silver frame, glass dusty from years of not being held. Her mother's face, captured in 1985, smiling at some Christmas morning that Emma had been too young to remember. She held it next to the Polaroid. They matched. The eyes, the slight tilt of the head, the way the smile didn't reach her gaze. Her mother didn't die of natural illness, like Sterling had told her father. Sitting in the leather chairs of his office, speaking with the soft gravity of a man delivering inevitable news. Rain streaked the apartment windows. Emma's jaw tightened until her teeth ached. The leather chair in Sterling's office was designed to be uncomfortable in subtle ways. Emma sat in it anyway, her back rigid, her social worker badge visible on her lapel like evidence. Dr. Julian Sterling reclined opposite her, silver-haired and impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His office smelled like expensive leather and the faint chemical sweetness of air freshener that couldn't quite cover something underneath. Something clinical and wrong. He smiled. His eyes didn't move. Emma, I was so sorry to hear about your mother's passing all those years ago. How can I help you today? His voice was soothing, a therapist's voice, practiced in the art of making people believe they were being heard. Emma pulled a photocopy of her mother's compliance report from her bag and slid it across the polished desk. Sterling didn't blink. His expression turned to stone. He leaned forward, invading her personal space, his spine straightening with predatory grace. His voice dropped an octave, became something visceral and true, the voice underneath the professional mask. You are a small girl in a big town, Emma. One phone call and your license is revoked. One email and you're unstable. Walk away. Emma's hands clenched into fists. She stood so fast, her chair tipped backward, clattering against the floor. She leaned across the desk, her face glowing with rage, her reflection tiny and distorted in Sterling's glasses. "My mother didn't die, did she? She's still here, in your annex." Sterling remained seated, watching her with the expression of someone watching an insect in a jar. He picked up a sleek black desk phone and turned it toward his face, his thumb hovering over a speed dial button. "Leave now, or I start making calls." Emma left. Behind her, the red light of a recording device sat on his desk, blinking. The coastal road unwound before her, fog rolling in from the Atlantic like something alive and hungry. Emma gripped the steering wheel of her old Volvo, her knuckles white, her breath coming in measured bursts. In the rearview mirror, 2 white headlights suddenly appeared, closing the gap at high speed. A black SUV. Military grade. The kind of vehicle that didn't belong on a coastal road, except it did, because Sterling knew exactly where she'd drive. The SUV closed the distance. 100 yards. 50. 30. It hit her rear bumper. The impact was a fist. Emma's head jerked forward. Glass from her taillights exploded on the asphalt like diamonds scattering. The sound of destruction filled the car. Metal shrieking against metal, the high-pitched complaint of sheet metal deforming. She gripped the wheel, fighting the skid. The road curved. The cliff's edge was there, waiting, dark against the fog. Another hit. The SUV sideswipes her, pushing the Volvo toward the guardrail. Emma steered into the skid, her tires screaming in protest, the friction burning rubber into the atmosphere. She slammed on the brakes. The SUV overshoots. It spins in the middle of the road, tires smoking, for a moment completely vulnerable. Emma yanked her handbrake. The Volvo stops with a shudder. She jumped out, grabbed the tire iron from the trunk, didn't think about it. A burly man in a tactical vest emerged from the SUV, already moving toward her, already reaching. Emma didn't wait. She swung the tire iron. It connected with his lead arm. A dull thud of metal on bone. He grunted, not stopping, just adjusting his approach. "You need to stop," he said, reaching for something on his belt. Emma kicked. Her boot caught his groin. He doubled over, gasping, and she brought the tire iron back up for another swing. But he tackled her instead, and they crashed together into the fog-shrouded world. He punched her in the stomach, the air exploding out of her lungs. Emma tasted copper. Her vision went white, then red, then sharp again. He tried to grab her bag from the car seat. Emma bited his hand through his glove, drawing blood, and kicked the car door shut on his arm. He screamed, a high animal sound. And Emma left him there, bleeding against the fog, and drove. The accelerator was floored. The old Volvo wailed but climbed toward the town. Martha lived in a trailer that the years had forgotten. Rusted metal siding, a screen door hanging by one hinge, crickets singing the song of rural decay. Emma knocked at dead of night. The door creaked open. An old woman stood there, her face covered in deep scars, surgical scars, precise and ugly. She clutched a silver cross around her neck with fingers that shook. "Yes?" The woman's voice was thin, rationed. Emma held up the Project Aura file. Martha's eyes welted with tears instantly. She pulled Emma inside without speaking. The walls were covered in corkboards, missing posters, dozens of them. Women's faces stretching back through decades, some in color, most faded. Some dated from the 1980s, some dated from last year. The mayor's wife, the bank manager's daughter, the police captain's sister. They're all dead, Martha whispered, or disappeared. He told their families they left town. Car accidents, suicides, mental breakdowns. Emma's stomach turned. Martha pointed to a photo of a woman in a wedding dress. Young, smiling, alive. The mayor's wife. She didn't die in a car crash like he said. Sterling took her to the annex. She's still there. The room tilted slightly. Emma sat down without permission. Martha bent and pulled up a loose floorboard. Inside was a second recorder, identical to Emma's. She lifted it with both hands, as if it were made of something fragile and dangerous. He didn't just experiment on them, Martha said. He used them to control the men in this town, wives, daughters, lovers, brainwashed, monitored. One word from Sterling and these men did whatever he wanted. He owned the entire town. Emma looked at the list Martha showed her. Names, powerful names. The mayor, the police chief, the head of the hospital board, the president of the university. Sterling had them all, recordings, photographs, leverage. Project Aura wasn't a medical experiment. It was a blackmail ring, and the vulnerable women were the payment, the proof, the insurance policy. We have to burn it down, Emma said. Martha shook her head. You can't fight what's already embedded. Sterling has eyes everywhere, police, city council, half the lawyers in town. Then we make it impossible to ignore. The perimeter fence had a chain through it, heavy and new. Emma used bolt cutters to snap it. The chain fell with a heavy metallic clang that felt too loud in the pre-dawn quiet. She slipped through. The annex was a low, concrete building with no windows, set back from the main road behind half a mile of dead forest. It looked like the kind of place where secrets came to die. Inside, the hallway was sterile white. Fluorescent lights hummed a frequency that made her teeth ache. A security guard turned the corner. Emma ducked into a doorway. A motion sensor tripped. A red siren began to pulse like a heartbeat, a rhythm like the sound of her own blood in her ears. 2 guards cornered her in the next hallway. Emma grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and pulled the pin. White foam exploded outward, a cloud so thick it erased the world. She heard them coughing, heard the sound of their boots slipping on the foam-slick floor. The second guard tackled her anyway. They crashed into a tray of medical instruments. Scalpels and trays clattered to the floor like a symphony of surgery. Emma grabbed a heavy metal tray and swung it upward. It connected with his temple. He fell. She scrambled up, breathing hard, but didn't make it 3 steps before the taser leads found her. 2 prongs, a thin wire, 50,000 volts. Her body went rigid. Every muscle spasmed simultaneously. She collapsed against the cold tiles as consciousness fractured into pain. Dr. Sterling walked into the frame. He stepped over her body without looking down. "Bring her to the preparation room," he said. The cell was small. Padded walls, no windows. No sound except the distant dripping of water somewhere far underground. Emma woke up with zip ties cutting into her wrists. Dr. Sterling sat on a small stool, turning her father's old pocket watch over and over in his hands. "Good morning, Emma." He opened the watch. Inside was a photograph of Emma as a child, maybe 5 years old, sitting on her mother's lap. The image seemed to mock her from across the decades. Sterling held up a bank check, decades old. The signature was her father's. The memo line read, "For Elena's peace." The amount was substantial. "Your father didn't just know," Sterling said, his voice conversational, as if they were discussing the weather. "He paid for it. He wanted a quiet wife. He got one." Emma's world shattered into fragments that would never fit together again. A folder sat on the floor beside Sterling. She could read the label from where she lay. Project Emma. She looked at the ceiling. No windows. No way out. She was buried underground, entombed in white padding and fluorescent light. This was where her mother had ended. This was where everyone ended. Sterling stood to leave, and the heavy steel door clicked shut with a sound like a coffin seal. The bolt slid home. Then, total silence. A silence so complete it seemed to have weight. Emma found a small, sharp piece of metal from the fire extinguisher struggle still lodged in her sleeve. She started sawing at her zip ties. The plastic resisted. She kept sawing. Her wrists began to bleed. The pain was something to hold on to. Something real. The ventilation grate came free with effort. Emma pulled herself up into the dark, narrow duct, her shoulders scraping metal. She crawled forward, her knees scraping. The ductwork was a maze, but it had to lead somewhere. She passed over a room where Sterling's guards were looking for her. Their voices drifted up through the metal. She can't have gone far. This place is sealed. She kept moving toward the faint light visible at the end of the duct. The final grate resisted, then gave. Emma kicked it out and fell 10 feet into a snowbank outside. The cold was a shock after the sterile heat of the underground. She groaned, rolled, and looked up at the pre-dawn sky. Her car was gone, but there was a bicycle leaning against a shed, old but functional. She pedaled down the frozen hill toward the town. Her wrists were bleeding. Her ribs were broken or close to it. Every breath was a negotiation with pain. The clock tower showed 8:55 a.m. The town hall meeting started at 9 a.m. She reached the parking lot with 3 minutes to spare. She pulled the Grundig recorder and Martha's tapes from her inner jacket pocket. She'd hidden them inside her bra before the guards caught her in the hallway. The recorders were intact. The magnetic tape still wound and waiting to testify. The town hall auditorium fell silent when Emma pushed through the double doors. The mayor stood at the podium. Sterling sat in the front row, smiling. 1,000 townspeople filled the seats, the standing room, the hallways beyond. Emma's appearance, disheveled, bleeding, wild-eyed, was impossible to ignore. "Stop right there," someone said. 2 police officers moved toward her. Emma held up the recorder and sprinted down the aisle. She reached the podium. Her fingers found the auxiliary audio jack. She plugged the recorder in. She hit play. A woman's voice boomed through the massive hall, amplified and echoing. A voice that had been silenced for 40 years suddenly filling the space, filling every ear, filling the air with truth. Dr. Sterling told me if I spoke, I'd never see my children again. He told me my husband wanted this. He told me I was sick, that I needed to be fixed. The crowd made a sound, a collective gasp, then a rising murmur. Sterling stood up. His face was purple, the veins in his neck pulsing visibly. He moved toward Emma, but the mayor, hearing his own wife's voice on the tape, his face collapsing as the recognition hit, put a hand on Sterling's chest and stopped him. Emma played Martha's second tape. It detailed everything: the experiments, the blackmail, the leverage, the names. One by one, women in the audience stood up. Some were crying. Some were pointing at Sterling and the other men. The sheriff, who used to play poker with Sterling every Wednesday, put his hands on Sterling's wrists. Handcuffs clicked into place. Sterling was led away, his perfect composure finally cracking, finally falling apart. Emma held up a final document from the box. A contract between Dr. Sterling and a pharmaceutical corporation. Pharma Sync. The town wasn't just a site for experiments. It was a wholesale laboratory for a product called compliance. A drug designed to make people malleable, suggestible, controllable. The women of Blackwood weren't patients. They were test subjects in a commercial operation. Their suffering was marketable. Their brainwashing was scalable. Sterling was led away in handcuffs by the sheriff, who couldn't meet Emma's eyes. Emma walked to her father, standing at the back of the room. He was weeping. He looked at his daughter, his survivor, his condemnation, and handed her a small brass key. "Your mother left this for you," he said. "A safety deposit box. I didn't know what was in it. I didn't want to know." Emma took the key. She looked at the women of the town. They were gathered in the center of the hall now, talking, holding each other, breaking the silence forever. Emma walked out of the auditorium. She took the tape recorder and smashed it against the stone steps. Plastic shattered. The magnetic tape spilled out. She stamped on it, grinding the precious evidence into dust and fragments. No more recording. No more machinery of proof. Just the truth that had finally been spoken aloud. The coastal cliff was where her mother supposedly jumped. Emma stood on the edge of the granite, the Atlantic Ocean crashing against the rocks below, the air sharp and salty and full of the sound of water destroying stone. She pulled a single, unburnt page from the Project Aura file. It was her mother's handwriting, the only handwriting of her mother she had ever seen. A list. Things Elena wanted to do. See Italy, learn piano, watch my daughter grow up, dance, laugh without fear. The list was incomplete. The handwriting was weak, as if Elena had been writing through sedation. Emma let the page go. The salt wind took it immediately, carrying it out over the cliff, toward the rocks and the water below. She turned and walked toward a new car. A gift from the town's survivors. People who were trying to find ways to say thank you that didn't feel obscene. She got inside. The seat was still stiff. The interior smelled like the factory that made it. She started the engine. In the passenger seat sat a digital recorder, modern and compact. She pressed record. "My name is Emma Vance, and this is how we took our town back." She drove away from the cliff. The abandoned clinic faded in her mirror, marked now for demolition, already becoming history. The coastal road stretched ahead. Highway signs pointed toward places she'd never been. The ocean remained visible on the right, vast and indifferent, continuing its endless conversation with the stone. Emma drove, the digital recorder still spinning, the blue wreck light glowing on the dashboard like an eye finally opening. The car disappeared over the horizon. The screen faded to black. The sound of waves remained, a final roar, primal and vast, before silence claimed everything.